We spent 100 days in hardcore Minecraft on one block. In this challenge, we spawn in an endless void with only one block beneath our feet. However, this block is different, as every time we break it, a new and random block will spawn in its place. It can spawn chests filled with useful items, and even all sorts of mobs. However, we decided to take on this one block challenge in hardcore. This means that if either of us make one small mistake, the challenge will be over. Make sure to watch till the end of the video to see if we can survive the whole 100 days. It was our first day in the world, and we had to get used to being stuck in the middle of the sky. But once we realised there was nothing else to do, we took the plunge and broke the block beneath our feet. Quickly, we made some small expansions to our island, and then we started breaking the block again. Eventually, we managed to get our hands on some wood and also some saplings. We then decided to craft up some wooden slabs and expand our island a bit more. This is because we knew that if either of us fell, the whole challenge would be over. Next, we went back to breaking the block, and suddenly a little porky friend appeared. Also, we managed to get our hands on our first bit of water. Then suddenly, after breaking the block a bit more, a plume of hearts appeared. We checked inside the chest to see what it was, and it turns out it was tons of wood. And eventually, after a whole day of breaking, we managed to get an upgrade. This is something that happens every so often to the block once you've broken it enough. Once the upgrade was finished, we saw that we'd reached stage 1, which was the plains. At this point, we decided to set ourselves the goal of reaching stage 10 on the block. Then, just before it turned night, I decided to expand out our platform a bit more and plant down our sapling. Also, later that night, Lockdown had an intense stare down with our pig. In the morning, we got back to breaking our block, and then we decided to expand our tree farm because we had some more saplings. The more trees we could grow, the easier it would be for us to expand our island. Also, later on in that day, we managed to get another little friend for our pig. But we thought having our pigs roaming free wouldn't be the best idea. So I started crafting up some fences. However, when I was crafting, Lockdown thought it'd be a good idea to break the crafting table. And this meant that I almost punched Lockdown off the edge of our island. And this made him pretty mad. Finally, we managed to finish our pig pen, but it turns out one of the pigs wasn't too fond of being caught in the pen. We also managed to get ourselves a cow, so we pushed that into the pen as well. We then realised that we had a decent amount of dirt, so we started building a place that we could grow some wheat. Also, if this video gets 15,000 likes, we'll do 200 days. Anyway, on with the video. By day 3, we'd managed to collect all sorts of animals inside our pen. And also we realised that one of our first trees had grown. So we ran over to it and started chopping it down. Then we decided to further expand our tree farm with some of the saplings we got from that tree. Also later in the day, I planted down some melon seeds which we had got from the block. In the morning, I glanced over at our wheat farm and realised that one of our wheat seeds was almost fully grown. So I sprinted over to it and started doing a little dance. But I got a bit carried away and yeah, this happened. Once I was finished being embarrassed, we headed back to the block and started mining it again. This meant that we got a lot more animals to go inside of our pen. Also later in the day, Lockdown casually murdered this chicken. We then rounded out day 4 by chopping down all our trees and then replanting them. We started out day 5 by hiding from a burning skeleton, but luckily the skeleton was dumb enough to walk straight off the edge of the island. At this point we realised our pen was getting pretty crowded, so we decided to start the construction of a bigger pen. Once the pen was almost complete, we decided to go back to breaking the block. And eventually we got another upgrade. The block was now in phase 2, which was the underground. This meant that we were one step closer to our goal of reaching phase 10. But at this point we decided we should have some other goals too. Eventually we decided that our goals would be to make an iron farm, which would come in extremely useful, and also to defeat the Ender Dragon. We had absolutely no idea how we would get to the end, but hopefully we could do it. Next, we decided to start moving all of our animals into their new pen. This was an extremely painful process, but eventually, after killing a few pesky animals, we managed to get them all in. The next morning, we noticed that some of our melons had grown, so we headed on over and harvested our first melons. Then we went back to breaking the block, and to our surprise, a mushroom cow appeared. This was great because it meant we could get unlimited food by using bowls on the mushroom. Also later that night, we almost got ambushed by the sneaky creeper, but luckily Lockdown managed to take it out. As well as spawning friendly mobs, the block can also spawn hostile mobs too. And this is what happened to us several times on day 7. And some of our encounters were a lot closer than we would have liked. Then later on in the day, we managed to plant our first few spruce trees, and we also got one to grow. Over the last few days, we managed to get some iron from breaking the block. So Lockdown had the good idea to make some shears and craft us up some beds. This meant that we didn't have to risk any more mob attacks. We finished off day 8 by harvesting all of our trees, and then we spent the night tucked up in our new cozy beds. The next day, I started out by chopping down some giant spruce trees that we'd grown. And while I was busy doing that, Lockdown had another unwelcome visit from a creeper. Once Lockdown had finished patching up our base, we decided to go back to breaking the block. Eventually, after a while of breaking, we managed to get another upgrade. We were now in phase 3, which was the Icy Tundra. Also that night, we managed to get ourselves a map so that we could see what our base looked like. On day 10, we started breaking the block again, and suddenly a wolf appeared. Annoyingly though, we had nothing to tame it, so it just had to stay where it was. However, a few moments later, some strays spawned and we killed them. This meant that I now had a bone so I could tame myself a dog. And this made me very happy. Also later in the day, this crazy fox spawned, and I have no idea why it was jumping so high. Stupidly, we let the fox into our animal pen, and then it proceeded to try and kill all of our chickens. Also later that night, we managed to get a polar bear. It turns out this block was full of all sorts of interesting creatures. On day 11, we went back to breaking the block, and suddenly 2 more strays appeared. But these weren't the smartest strays, as one of them decided to sprint straight off the edge of the island. Then later on, we got another dog and Lockdown tamed it. We then decided to let our dogs do their business, and then popped out a cute little puppy. We then decided to spend all of day 12 harvesting up some of our trees. The next morning, we were peacefully breaking the block when suddenly a monster party appeared. This is what spawns every so often when you're breaking the block. We were quickly outnumbered, so we ran away to take cover, but bravely our dogs rushed in to fight. We were worried about our dogs getting hurt, so we ran in to try and help. But unfortunately, it was too late and they were both killed. We then decided to murder the rest of the mobs out of anger. The rest of the day we were very sad. But luckily, by the end of the day, we managed to get a piece of ice. This made us a bit happier, as it meant that we could get unlimited water. By day 14, we managed to get another upgrade, which was the ocean phase. Then we decided to start expanding our farm a little bit more, and this baby chicken had a play in some water. We then ended out the day by adding another animal to our ever-growing collection. In the morning, we went back to breaking the block, and suddenly we got our first diamond. We then tried to save this helpless fish, and once again, Lockdown blew up another creeper. By day 16, we thought it was time to expand our island. So we grabbed some spruce slabs and started building out from our platform. We made this nice little central circle, and then we made a platform to build our house. Day 17 was a very productive day. This is because we wasted the whole day arguing about how we would put our chests. Luckily, day 18 was much more productive. This is because we finished off the platform for our house, and then I got to work on building it. And by the end of the day, I'd made some pretty decent progress. Day 19 started out like most of the days with breaking the block. But after a while of breaking, suddenly another monster party spawned. This time, the monster party was filled with guardians and drowns. But luckily, it wasn't too difficult, as most of the guardians decided to jump in the void. However, the 2 trident-wielding drowns tracked us down and trapped us inside of our house. Eventually, we managed to kill them, but at this point, we had another problem on our hands. Because we hadn't lit up any of our base, there was tons of mobs spawning. So we decided to spend the rest of the night in the safety of our house. By the early morning of day 20, our problem had gotten a lot worse. But luckily, the sun soon rose and most of the mobs were killed. However, we still had an extreme creeper problem. So we gathered up all the blocks we had and started bridging back to our main island. Then once again, we decided to wait it out to see if the mobs would despawn. By day 21, there was still quite a few mobs in our base. So we decided to go to the top of our tallest tree and start building away from our base to try and get the mobs to despawn. And eventually, after bridging quite far away, the last of the mobs despawned. This meant that that night we were finally able to sleep again. We started out day 22 by lighting up our island to make sure we wouldn't have the same problem again. Then it was time to tidy up our base a little bit, so we broke the bridges that we'd made, and then I organised the farm a bit more. We started out day 23 by organising our items into our chests, and then while I was working on the farm, Lockdown got another drown to spawn. I don't know what it is about being in the sky, but it seems to turn all of the mobs dumb, as when the drown spawned, it decided to run straight off the edge of the island. The next morning went extremely well. This is because we started breaking the block and we got a rare chest, which inside had a trident. And better yet, once we broke the chest, we got another upgrade. Now we were in the jungle dungeon phase, which meant we were halfway to our goal. Once the upgrade was done, we went back to breaking the block, and soon enough we got 2 parrots to spawn. We quickly got some seeds to tame them, and before we knew it, we had 2 more feathery friends. However, the day wasn't all good, as we got ambushed by some flying babies, and also some angry witches. But luckily, we soon took them out. On day 25, we managed to get ourselves a horse and a panda. Then later on, we also managed to get ourselves some sugarcane. However, the day quickly turned bad when a monster party spawned. This time it was filled with angry Vexes, a witch, and some spiders. The Vexes put up a pretty good fight, but soon they were all dead. Also later in the day, a mean witch decided to poison all of our animals. I spent the next morning chopping down some giant spruce trees, but then I got distracted when we saw a Vex and a parrot dancing in the sky. However, my amazement was short-lived as Lockdown decided to murder my parrot. But not to worry, as I quickly grabbed some seeds and tamed myself a new one. Then we decided to spend all of day 27 mining the block. And by the end of it, we managed to get another upgrade, which meant we were in phase 6, which was the desert. On day 28, we thought it was time for some actual progress. So Lockdown started building some nice railings around our base, and then I got back to work on building our house. I continued working on the house throughout all of day 29, and by day 30 I'd made some pretty decent progress. Then later on in the day we got ourselves our first villager, and his name was Owen. We then pushed Owen into the animal pen where he belongs. After Owen was dealt with, Lockdown had his eyes set on my new parrot. He ran over to it and pushed it into the water to try and drown it, but luckily my bird outsmarted Lockdown and it got out of the water. We spent all of day 31 breaking the block, and we managed to get ourselves some more villagers. And just before it turned night, one of the villagers was cheeky enough to try and sleep in Lockdown's bed. Because our inventories were full of loads of random stuff from breaking the block, we decided to spend all of day 32 sorting out our inventories and tidying up the base. The next morning we'd managed to break the block enough to get another upgrade, which was the nether phase. This was great because it hopefully meant we'd be able to get some lava so we could make an infinite cobblestone generator. But before breaking any nether blocks, we decided to build some walls around it. This would hopefully stop any nether mobs setting fire to our base. We then rounded out day 33 by almost getting murdered by some piglins. On day 34, Lockdown crafted himself a diamond pick so we could mine the obsidian in the block. We then decided to spend the whole rest of the day mining the block, and along the way we were attacked by some fat pigs, some lanky skeletons, and also this floating gold thing. The next day we were still on the hunt for some lava, and finally we managed to get some. Then for some reason I decided to celebrate by setting myself on fire. In the morning we quickly rushed to make ourselves a cobblestone gen, and once we got it working, we decided to spend all of day 36, 37 and 38 mining cobblestone. And finally, by day 39, we'd managed to collect a lot of cobblestone. This hopefully meant that we wouldn't need to collect any more cobblestone anytime soon. Once we were done with the cobblestone, we went back to breaking the block. And all of a sudden, another monster party spawned. And it was filled with piglins, ghasts and blazes. However, this wasn't good as soon enough our base was on fire. Eventually, after a lot of fighting, all of the mobs were dead. But it became apparent that there was a lot of damage done to our base. However, this gave us the opportunity to change up the tree farm a bit. And finally, by day 40, our new tree farm was complete. We then spent the rest of the day messing around in some water under our base. But it soon became scary when the water was lowering and I was being brought towards the void. But luckily, Lockdown saved me and put some water so I could get back up. By day 41, it was finally time to finish off our house. So I quickly grabbed some of our cobble and I got to work on detailing the house. I continued working on the house from day 41 all the way to day 45. And while I was working on the house, Lockdown was busy making a place for our villagers. By the end of day 45, the outside of our house was complete. Then on day 46, it was time to do the interior. So firstly, we added some nice stairs up to the second floor, then we made a nice place for our beds, and finally, we added in some furnaces. We decided to spend the whole next day breaking the block to try and get through the nether phase. We were making some pretty decent progress until some piglins spawned and they almost killed me. That was a close one. Later on that day, while I was organising my inventory into a chest, I was almost blown off the edge of the island by a ghast. Luckily though, I managed to escape and Lockdown soon killed it. On day 48, we were once again breaking the block. And finally, after a lot of breaking, we got another upgrade. We were now in phase 8, which was whatever that says. We once again started breaking the block to see what was in this phase, and suddenly a couple of bees popped out. We quickly grabbed some flowers to try and capture them, but the bees were having none of it, and they started flying down into the void. Lockdown tried to go after them, but at this point, they were too far away. On day 49, we had our eyes set on our second goal, which was to build an iron farm. And of course, we needed villagers to do so. So I collected up some carrots and we started breeding the villagers. Also at one point in the day, I caught a father and son villager having a staring contest. By day 50, we had enough villagers to be able to make an iron farm. And also it was a good sign to see an iron golem spawning on top of our villager pen. We then spent the rest of the day bridging away from our island to find a place that we could build the iron farm. We spent day 51 making our new bridge look a bit nicer, and also watching some tutorials on how to build an iron farm. On day 52, we realised that we would need some iron to be able to make the iron farm, so we decided to start killing the iron golems that spawned on top of our villager pen. We then spent the whole rest of the day gathering up materials we would need to build the iron farm. The next morning, it was time to actually start building the farm. And by day 54, we were finally ready for the dreaded task of getting some villagers in. After a long struggle with the villagers, we finally managed to get all 3 of them in. Now it was time to get ourselves a zombie to spawn on the platform we'd made. However, we had no luck with getting zombies that could pick up items. Our bad luck continued throughout all of day 55, but finally by day 56, we managed to get a zombie that wouldn't despawn. We spent the rest of day 56 and all of day 57 building the farm. And finally we had ourselves a fully functioning iron farm. This meant that we could tick one of our goals off of our list. On day 58 we began preparing for our next task, which was to go into the nether. This preparation was made a lot easier by the fact that we now had an iron farm. This is because we were able to make a full set of iron tools and also some armor. Then we got our inventories ready and went to bed ready for the nether. The next morning we made an extension to our base where we could put the portal, and then we headed into the nether. We then spent the next 6 days aimlessly wandering around the nether in the search of a nether fortress. And along the way we glided in our boats, fought some ghasts, and roasted some pigs. And on day 65 we finally found a nether fortress. We quickly rushed in and started battling our way through the mobs. Also, somehow on one of the first wither skeletons I killed, I got its skull, and this is extremely rare. We kept fighting our way through the various nether mobs and we had a few close calls. But eventually we managed to get enough blaze rods, so we left the fortress and headed back home. Finally, after a long journey, we stepped through our portal and we were safely back home. We then spent all of day 66 emptying out our inventories and also sorting out some of our chests. And by day 67, it was time to start breaking the block again. This is because we needed to get through 2 more phases to reach our goal of phase 10. Suddenly, while we were breaking the block, some baby slimes spawned. I thought they were cute, so I tried to keep them inside our animal pen, but Lockdown was having none of it and he brutally murdered them. Day 68 was once again another day of breaking the block. And along the way spawned an annoying bird, and also some more suicidal bees. Then on day 69, we decided to have a more relaxed day, so we spent the entire day sitting back and looking at our map. The next morning, we were peacefully breaking the block when suddenly an angry swarm of bees attacked. They quickly poisoned me and my heart started to tick down. And by the time the poison wore off, it was the lowest I'd ever been in this 100 days. That would have been pretty embarrassing if I'd died to a bee. Also later on in the day, we got another monster party. This time it was filled with tons of bees and also some phantoms. Luckily we managed to kill most of the bees without any trouble, but the phantoms refused to fly down and attack, so we had to deal with their annoying noises the whole rest of the day. By day 71 we finally managed to get another upgrade, but my celebrations were interrupted by this annoying phantom. We were now in phase 9, which was the Desolate Land, and this meant we only had one more phase to go until we completed another goal. We then spent the rest of the day messing around, but at one point lockdown hit me off of our base, but luckily I clutched in some water. On day 72 I went to go get some cobble, but then I realised we had hardly any left. So we decided to make ourselves another cobblestone generator, and we spent the next 4 days mining cobble. And finally, by day 76, we had a full double chest of cobble. This meant that we would have enough cobble for our next project, which was to sort out our storage system. I spent the next 2 days building and labelling the storage room, and by day 78, it was time to move our items in. Now that our storage system was full, it was time to make it look a bit nicer. So I spent day 79 building some walls and some pillars around it, and on day 80, we finished it off with a nice roof. The next morning we set out with the goal of making ourselves a full enchanting table. This is because we thought enchanted gear would give us a better chance against the Ender Dragon. But we soon realised we had a problem. We realised that we still hadn't planted any of our sugarcane, so getting paper was going to be pretty difficult. I quickly rushed to get our first few bits of sugarcane planted, and while I was doing this, Lockdown was busy making a pen to breed some cows. On day 82, we realised that it was now a race of time to see if we could get enough paper and leather to enchant before day 100. Because we didn't have much else to do, I decided to check out the tree farms that Lockdown had recently made. Then I spent the rest of the day doing odd jobs such as collecting carrots and breeding our cows. On day 83, we thought it'd be a good idea to get ourselves a fletching villager so that we could get ourselves some arrows. And then I decided to spend the rest of the day annoying Lockdown's new cat. The next morning I brought my parrot out with me and let it sit by some water. Then I realised that some more of our sugarcane had grown, so I quickly rushed over and replanted it. Then we decided to spend the rest of the day breaking the block to try and get to phase 10, and along the way we were almost blown up by some creepers, we were attacked by a horde of skeleton horses, and worst of all, 2 evokers spawned. They quickly shot their minions towards us and we were almost instantly killed. Luckily we managed to run away in time, but the Vexes were still chasing us. They got us down to extremely low health multiple times, but eventually we managed to kill them. Day 85 was yet again another day of waiting for the sugarcane to grow. So we continued breaking the block, and this time a monster party spawned. What happened on this day was extremely similar to what happened on day 84, which was we got extremely close to dying, but eventually we managed to kill them all. Finally, after almost 2 more days of breaking the block, we managed to get the next upgrade. We were now in phase 10, which was the end, and this meant that we'd completed another one of our goals. But before we could start celebrating, we still needed to get through phase 10, and also we needed to make sure we had enough sugarcane so we could enchant. On day 88, a shulker spawned from the block, and just before it died, it got one shot off and made the world's first flying donkey. However, the day soon turned bad when the hardest monster party we'd ever had spawned. A swarm of the strongest creatures in Minecraft quickly attacked. This was a really close fight, but somehow we managed to survive. By day 89, our sugarcane was ready for a full harvest. But unfortunately, we would have to wait for them to grow a bit more before we could make our enchanting table. However, I think we had plenty of cows. We then decided to spend the rest of the day breaking the block, and along the way we managed to get some Eyes of Ender from some chests. We spent the whole morning of day 90 breaking the block, and finally we managed to unlock the end portal. We broke one more block and got gifted with a nice chest, and then the block started upgrading again. It turns out we had completed all of the phases in the block and now we were in the after phase. But we decided to leave this for a potential 200 days. On day 91 we crafted an enchanting table and made a platform for it, and then it was time to slaughter all of our cows. The next day we made our first few bookshelves, and then lockdown added some brewing stands to our enchanting area. On day 93 we decided to put to use the few diamonds we had and craft ourselves some diamond chest plates and some swords. We also managed to finish off the enchanting table, so we spent the rest of that day enchanting our gear, and by the end we had some pretty decent stuff. Because the majority of our base was made out of spruce, we decided to spend all of day 94 converting our main area from oak wood into spruce. And when we were done, things definitely looked a lot better. We then spent the next 2 days working on a new little project, and by day 97 it was finished. And yes, it does say sub, which is what you guys should do if you enjoyed this video, because it took over 60 hours to make. Anyway, that's enough self-promotion, let's get back to the video. The next day we started gathering together all the things we'd need to make potions, but we couldn't brew any yet because we were waiting for our netherwarts to grow. In fact, we were waiting so long for the netherwarts to grow that we resorted to dancing to try and get them to hurry up. But finally, on day 99, the netherwarts grew and we started brewing some potions. I made us some potions of strength and lockdown made some slow falling. Once we had all the potions we need, we set out our inventory, and now we were ready to complete our third and final goal, which was to defeat the Ender Dragon. It was now day 100 and it was time to go into the end. So we grabbed our Eyes of Ender, stood in the portal and placed them in. As soon as we spawned in, we quickly rushed to the main island so we wouldn't get knocked off. Then we huddled together and splashed ourselves with slow falling. We built up to the main area of the island, and then there she was, the Ender Dragon. We shot arrow after arrow up at the Dark Towers, and they fell one by one. And soon, the last of them was gone. Now all that was left to do was to slay the dragon. We were slowly chipping away at the dragon's health by firing our arrows into the sky. But we soon realised our mistake as we hadn't brought any beds, so we had to do it the old-fashioned way. The dragon took its place upon its perch, so I started hacking at its throat with my sword. Now almost half of the dragon's health was gone. As we were waiting for the dragon to come back down, some of her minions started attacking me. But luckily there was water nearby and I had a golden apple. Finally, once again, the dragon took their place upon the podium. And this was it.